Twitter drama. A good way of getting views and a good way of looking into the void and it never staring back. Because there's nothing more stupid than Twitter. So at first I want to talk about Vaush, ContraPoint, Cat Black, and all of that. But after watching a 7 hour long live stream VOD, reading leaked DMs, and being halfway through reading a fucking essay written on Twitter, I realized that it was fucking useless. Why should I care about what person A said to person B on Twitter? So instead of being a full recap, I'm just gonna talk about the interesting ideas and debates that came from the whole thing. And there were two of those. The first one being, can we joke about everything? And the second, questioning who can do advocacy for what? Advocacy? Advocacy? This language fucking sucks. Okay, let's start with let's start with the first one. Can we joke about anything? To me, the answer is pretty simple. No subject is out of range to make a joke out of. But whether the joke is acceptable or not, or whether it's problematic or not, depends on a few things. There is the subject, the context, and finally the joke itself. So there are many topics that can get very controversial, and these tend to be the one that we say are punching down. That includes any joke made at the expense of minorities. And these are the ones that we're going to talk about because they are the ones that tend to be more controversial. To make a good joke at the expense of minorities, you need to know what you're doing because it's not easy to be punching down and be funny at the same time. This leads us to the context of that joke. The Twitter drama we saw last week was one of the situations where the bad joke can be made a non issue by the context. Vaush being, to my knowledge, someone that uses irony a lot to make edgy jokes, is kind of like the old Gamers Rise Up subreddit, before it became a mess of idiots, aka using far right messaging to make fun of it. But this is more irony based rather than what I was talking about before. It's not making fun of minorities as much as making fun of those who do. When it comes to making fun of minorities, I can't really bring up some good jokes because it's not something I'm good at doing. But when you look at minority comedians making fun of themselves and their cultures, you'll see a bunch of good examples. ContraPoint making fun of trans cat girls is a good example. It's not a display of hateful bigotry, rather than showing something strange or funny that happens within a certain community. And this leads me quite well to the second point. I promise that transition wasn't planned. The second interesting debate that came out during the whole debacle was who can talk about what? More precisely, non minority people talking about minority rights and doing advocacy for them. My opinion is it doesn't matter. Any advocacy for rights is good because that's one more voice in the public. But a lot of people who think this is a problem cite the fact that not everyone can know the intricacies of what it is to be a minority or to be LGBT. And while it is true that I cannot experience someone else's life, I'm going to try and present the problem in a different light. So, I am French. Sad, I know. I can speak for me being French and my experience of it as well, in a way that someone that knows nothing about France couldn't. Some people know more about what it is to be French than I do because they know more about history, they know more about the intricacies, but that doesn't make my experience invalid. I can write about being French and the experience of it, and anyone reading it will know about my particular experience. If anyone reads the experience of other French people, and I don't, that person will be more knowledgeable of what it is to be French than I do. So, except if there is some metaphysical thingy that makes being French unique in a way that can't be explained or understood, my experience can be shared and understood by non French people. The point I'm making is anyone can understand the experience of other people. Anyone can learn about and talk about other people's experience if they've read about them. There's a bigger chance that a French person will be more knowledgeable about being French than someone that isn't French. But in the end, it's not an exclusive knowledge. So that's one part of the argument. Because there's something else in that I tend to agree with. Wouldn't it be better if a French person that is knowledgeable about what being French is talks about Frenchness rather than someone who just read about it or talked about it with someone else? The answer is yes, but with exceptions. To come back to minority rights and advocacy, I am non binary. I go by they, them, and I have close to zero knowledge about gender and societal stuff that come with it. So, well, I could talk about what it is to be non binary in a country whose language doesn't allow it to exist. I wouldn't be able to tell much apart from my experience. Someone who studied sociology or did gender studies, even if this person is cis, would have much more knowledge on the experience of trans people and non binary people than I do, because they would have been in contact with more experiences than me through reading about them or talking with LGBT people. They wouldn't just have the one experience to gather information from, they would have a lot of them. When it comes to advocacy, it is the same way, in my opinion. So, once again, except if there's a metaphysical thing that changes and makes one's experience more valuable than another's knowledge, I don't see the problem. Well, there is a problem at the moment, and is that not enough minority creators that are knowledgeable about the facts have a big enough platform to rival those of non-minority platform, which is the part I agree with. But I don't agree with the idea that one has an obligation to use their platform to promote smaller creators. Except if it's me. Please promote my channel. Alright, rant on. Be kind to each other.